You know, the sources you sent us for this are they're staggering.
They really are.
I mean, we're talking about millions of documents,
Yeah.
emails, court filings, reports. It's not just a stack of paper. It's, what, 300 gigabytes? A portrait of truly unchecked power.
It's an almost unimaginable amount of data.
Yeah.
And navigating it, it's less about finding one single smoking gun and more about understanding the whole system, the architecture of secrecy he built.
And that's exactly the mission for this deep dive. We want to move past the headlines.
Right.
We're not just here to chronicle a criminal. We want to examine how someone with that level of wealth, that level of influence, can build a legal shield around themselves.
To operate completely above the law, even inside a system like the U.S.
Exactly. Yeah. So we need to pull out the crucial lessons here. The lessons about institutional failure, about power, and about accountability.
And to really understand the mechanism of that power, you have to go back to his foundations. So Epstein, born 1953, his background was in math and physics. But the accelerator, was his move into private investment banking. That's what gave him access to, well, just extraordinary capital.
And that move really hinges on one person, doesn't it? Leslie Wexner.
Oh, completely. That relationship was the ignition point. Epstein starts managing Wexner's massive private fortune.
And that wasn't just about the money he was making. It was about credibility.
Absolutely. It was transformative. It gave him instant credibility and the capital to start accumulating assets all over the world, offshore companies, jets, prime real estate.
And that wealth was immediately channeled into two things.
Yeah.
Connections and total isolation.
Okay, let's unpack that. Let's really look at the specific tools Epstein used to isolate his operation.
The sources detail this so clearly. The physical stage for his crimes,
Yeah.
the sheer scale, and the premeditation of it all is just astounding.
And the most notorious examples are, of course, the islands in the U.S. Virgin Islands.
He buys Little St. James in 1998, and then the even bigger one right next to it, Great St. James.
Yeah, and these aren't just vacation spots. We're talking about vast engineered compounds.
Little St. James was, what, 78 acres? Great St. James was 165.
And what stands out in the sources isn't the price tag so much as the infrastructure. The pools, the libraries, theaters, and that really bizarre blue sort of temple-like structure on a hill.
That's almost theatrical, isn't it?
It is, but the function behind it all was total legal insulation. The security measures were obsessive.
He had his own private police force patrolling the waters.
Exactly. Specifically hired to keep everyone out. Government officials, journalists, even scuba divers. It was a deliberate attempt to create a kind of sovereign space, totally outside the reach of normal law enforcement.
And to get people to and from this private kingdom, you had the physical link, the Boeing 727.
The infamous Lolita Express.
Which was used to transport, well, minors. Victims, sometimes as young as 11 to 14 years old. And just as critically, his associates.
And the sources lay out this whole calculated recruitment pyramid. They would target economically vulnerable women and girls, scouring high schools, shopping malls.
And it was a system where the victims themselves were then paid to bring in more girls. It's a trafficking pyramid.
And the person managing this entire logistics chain for Epstein and for the wider network of names that are now in these files, that was Esptein and Maxwell.
She was the key operative.
So if we connected this to the bigger picture, these islands, the jet, they weren't luxuries. They were calculated, very high-cost investments in operational secrecy.
Criminality built on the idea that you could literally buy your way out of the law's reach.
Which brings us to the timeline of institutional failure. I mean, a legal catastrophe that basically validated his confidence in that immunity.
The abuse started way back, didn't it? Late 1980s.
It did. But the first documented, credible warning the U.S. legal system gets is September 1996.
That's when Maria Farmer reported his activities with minors directly to the FBI.
And what happened?
Nothing.
Nothing. For almost a decade, nothing of any real consequence happened.
Until the Palm Beach police finally started an investigation in 2005. Which led to a grand jury charging him in 2006.
Right. With assisting prostitution, with trafficking, the case was robust.
But then we get to 2008, the moment the whole system just seems to break. The infamous sweetheart deal.
This is the absolute core of the systemic failure. The U.S. federal justice system negotiates a non-prosecution agreement with him.
Despite multiple federal charges. And the sentence he gets is, what was it, 13 months?
13 months, reduced from 16. And you have to remember, our sources point out that other people were facing 30 years in prison for similar crimes.
The disparity is just massive.
And the way he served that time was almost a joke. The work release privileges.
He was allowed to leave jail 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, to go to his office. What was the legal rationale for that?
There wasn't one. Not a satisfactory one anyway. It was just a demonstration of raw power.
The prosecutor who engineered it, Alexander Acosta, he made sure the deal protected.
Dozens of his co-conspirators. Their names were kept secret. The message the justice system sent was loud and clear. If you're rich and connected enough, the law will literally bend to protect you and your network.
It wasn't just a failure to prosecute him properly. It was an active negotiation by federal authorities to ensure the silence and protection of that network.
The system basically gave him a green light, and he continued for another decade.
Until he's finally rearrested in 2019 in New Jersey on new federal sex trafficking charges.
And that's when the political fallout finally hits. Acosta is forced to resign as labor secretary.
And then the final jarring chapter.
Yeah.
August 10th, 2019, Epstein is found dead in his jail cell.
Officially ruled a suicide. He was facing 45 years if he was convicted.
But the sources detail this immediate explosion of conspiracy theories, right? Because of all the protocol breaches.
Exactly. He was taken off suicide watch. There were CCTV footage failures. The guards weren't monitoring him properly. It just created an environment where any trust and institutional accountability completely collapsed.
And his death, of course, meant the main path to getting full judicial disclosure was just sealed off.
Instantly. The focus immediately shifted from him to the network his money had bought. Who else was protected by that deal?
Which brings us to the names. I mean, the files have led to this widespread publication of so many prominent figures. Politics, finance, science.
And this is where we have to apply some really critical thinking.
Of course.
You're sifting through millions of communications. Just because someone's name is on a flight log or mentioned in an email, that does not mean they participated in criminal activity.
Right. It's evidence of the extent of his influence. His social network was his greatest asset.
Exactly. So let's talk about some of the political figures the sources mention, and we have to be absolutely impartial here.
Yeah. So Donald Trump, for instance. The relationship there started in 1992.
And Trump claims it ended in 2004. The most cited detail, of course, is that 2002 quote where Trump calls Epstein a terrific guy.
Right, and says he shared an interest with me, specifying beautiful and a bit on the younger side.
The flight logs also show Trump flying on the Lolita Express 8 times between 93 and 96, sometimes with family, once solo.
The sources are also clear that a victim who was 14 at the time claimed in 2020 that Epstein introduced her to Trump, but she didn't accuse Trump of any misconduct.
Correct. And Trump's own stated reason for their falling out in 2004 was alleged harassment of staff at Mar-a-Lago and an argument over a property deal.
And it is crucial to note the final legal outcome here. The U.S. Department of Justice has repeatedly stated that accusations of misconduct against Trump in this scandal are false, that he is innocent.
Yes, that's the official position.
And it wasn't just U.S. figures. The sheer breadth of his private emails is wild. He's talking about global political figures like Imran Khan.
He is the former Prime Minister of Pakistan. He shows up in Epstein's emails from July 2018, right after Khan's election win.
And these are just Epstein's own private thoughts, right? His political commentary.
That's all they are.
Right.
It just reveals Epstein's own, often very vitriolic analysis. He calls Khan a much greater threat to peace than figures like Putin.
He even says Khan makes Donald Trump look like Albert Einstein. The language is incredibly insulting.
And what's critical for you to understand here is not the content of Epstein's insults. It's the realization that his network was just so vast that he was commenting on the highest levels of global politics.
We have to filter the sources, separate the actual conspirators from people just mentioned in some arrogant criminal's private emails.
Exactly. And while the legal consequences for him ended with his death, the consequences for the institutions that enabled him, well, those are still unfolding.
We've seen some major financial accountability.
Oh, yes. Major institutions have paid dearly. JP Morgan Chase settled for $75 million.
For what, specifically?
For knowingly holding his accounts and moving his money even though they were aware of the criminal activity.
And total settlements to the victims have reached